Okay, it's Roger from Mud Fossil University talking about free energy. And I see no reason that that cannot be accomplished. And I believe it can be accomplished with sonoluminescence and electron flood. Now, sonoluminescence creates a cavity in water, and when it collapses, it creates a tremendous amount of energy. Now, what creates a cavity in water? An explosion inside of water, and also frequency modulation inside of water that can cavitate it. And I am going to show you all of these things and demonstrate exactly what I'm saying is factually true. Now, can it be put into free energy? I can't do that, but maybe you can. Here's the way I say it can be done. A regular piston engine has inside of here, what happens is they shoot in gas. It goes in atomized, and when the piston comes up, it crushes it, and it becomes so unstable that it explodes. And of course, as a spark comes in, it explodes and drives it down. And then it goes down, and it comes back up again, compresses, explodes, and so forth. And between there's an evacuation sequence. Now, we wouldn't need the evacuation sequence. What we would do is come up, there would be water in here. When it came up, it would crush that water into a state where it cannot compress anymore. Water is almost uncompressible. So it would get to that state. You would inject a frequency, it would create sonoluminescence, which creates an enormous explosion. And that would drive the piston. Now, and then it would come back up and it would explode again, and there would just be water in here. Now, a different type would be a piston that went back and forth, water on both sides, boom, 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 boom. Some kind of spring assembly, and an engineer can make that work very easily. What we need is this energy. We need that energy to explode in that compressed space, in that uncompressible water, to drive that piston at an extreme amount of energy. Okay, it's Roger once again from Mud Fossil University. We're going to go a little deeper today into sonoluminescence and the associated electron flood theory. Now, this is what's called a Chinese water bowl, and it's constructed of copper, which is, I believe, significant. Although there are other ones of brass and different alloys, but it's primarily in that copper range. And it's constructed in such a manner as to make it virtually a speaker. And there's two handles on each side, and you rub your hands back and forth on the handles, and it creates a vibration. Like, you ever see where they take their finger and they rub it around a champagne glass, and all of a sudden it starts vibrating. Same thing here. Now, here's the takeaway. They're out in the sunlight, and he's shaking his hands back and forth, rubbing them, and you see this vibration start to occur over here, and it'll start to build, and you'll see it pulsating, 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 and then all of a sudden you're going to see lights show up here. Now, when I first originally watched this, I said, oh, look at that. The lights are in the shadow of his hand, which is here. And you'll be able to see him in the darkness if he did this in the darkness. And then I looked a little closer and I realized, no, it's exactly the opposite. In his shadow of his hand, there is no light. In the sunlight, it flashes, and that flash is not like a ripple on the water or something. That flash is sonoluminescence, and we'll go deeper into sonoluminescence because I believe it's the source of free power, and I almost am certain that this can be handled if it was looked at correctly, because there's more than just the sonoluminescence of vibrating the water. There's another situation that comes up with frequencies that make electrons loose. All right? A frequency is a shaken, very, 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 very high frequency, means little waves go back and forth and they tug the electrons and they shake them. Now, if they're so close to the nucleus of an electron, of an atom, that the electrons right next to the nucleus are shaken, they become loose. They just become loose, and you can drag them away, you can push them away, you can do all that stuff. That's what I'm calling electron flood. Now, the sun also creates electron flood, and I believe that's what's manifest here. Meaning that you're seeing the sonoluminescent hole that opens up here being increased or possibly just completely filled with electrons because the sun is beating down on it as a continuous source. So let's watch this. Here goes. Let me just. These guys are great. These are slow motion guys. Now watch this. I'm going to hit this. See right there. Watch this extremely carefully, and you'll see. Look. See it. Look. This is what I want you to see. Here's the shadow of his hand. This is sunlight. We're in the sunlight, and you'll see his hand come across, and as it does, it obscures those dots because they're not being flooded. Now watch. See it? Boom, boom. They're in his hand. They're in his hand. They're just barely touching his hand. You see that? But now they're starting to grow. That's this. Now, another thing to take away. You see the texture of this water? Let's walk this back just a smidge, because I'm sure you didn't notice that, and very few people do, and it took me a long time to see it. Let's come back to here. Okay, here we go. Shaking, 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 and it starts to rattle, rattle, rattle. Now look at the texture. See the texture? You see what's happened over here? These are lighting up away from the shadow of his hand. They're lighting up in the sunlight. Now, the texture of this water starts to become cloudy looking. What that means is it is now flooded with electrons. Now, don't forget, this is like, I think, 2,500 frames a second or something. It is fast. He's taking it's 2,500 times every second he's taking a picture, something like that. So look at these cloud of electrons work their way in. And now my next statement is, as it does, it fills this cavity, which is full of water, with electrons. Electrons do nothing more than shake everything. And that's what you're going to see, rising up off of the water. So let's just follow it through. I won't bother you too much more. Here it comes in. See it? Here comes in the texture. And here comes in from all over around here. It's starting to pulsate all around. And here it goes. And these are not reflections. Those are actually, and see? Nothing. See, wherever his hand is covered, it's not doing. Now, just by him barely rubbing here, now watch what happens. This all vibrates. You see that? It starts shaking like a speaker. Look at the water lofting up in the air. Now, that is lofting into the air, I believe, because it's gone into anti-gravity. And it goes into anti-gravity because it's become more positive. It's losing its electrons. There's something going on. I can't explain it exactly, but it's somehow losing the attraction to the Earth, which is magnetic. Now, I'm saying the attraction to the Earth is caused by the Earth's positiveness attracting negativeness. Now, somehow these have become more positive than negative and lofted into the air. That's my statement. I could be wrong, but that's what I'm seeing here. Now let's go into the sonoluminescence of the cavity that's created when a firecracker goes off underwater. Okay, more slow-mo, guys. Really great. They put a firecracker inside of a water tank. Now there's two pictures. This one here is in a different focal range, and it's you see the put it this way, there's more light coming out of this one than there is out of this one. So you're going to see this just brilliant. This one here you're going to see the explosion on the internal, and this one you see more or less on the outside. So here it goes. They shoot off the firecracker. Now here it goes. See, boom, there it goes. Now here it's expanding. Now as it expands, now the firecracker part is gone. The firecracker's used up. It's inside here now, but the cavity continues to grow as a shock wave. Now you see right in here, you see those are electrons. This is my statement. I could be wrong, but I believe those are electrons. Now watch over here. This is the most force of cavitation is here. And these are just expanding, and we're seeing the outside of it because they are being drawn in here, is my statement. And again, I could be wrong. Now here it goes, vroom, 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 and you see, now, see the glowing, the little colors and all that stuff? That is the the electrons. Those are literally electrons. And now this thing has expanded to its maximum. This cavity here in the external, you see right here, we've lost the explosion from the chemistry is gone now. And we're seeing still the light from it out here because it takes that long to get from the inside out to here. Literally, it's unbelievable how fast they're taking these pictures. Now, so this is the same picture. Only we're seeing the deep inside and there's almost nothing left because the explosion's done. And here we're seeing it as it has expanded to its external part. Now it's completely filled to as far as it can expand and cavitate. So what happens now? It's got to crush itself. Well, and this is the part I cannot explain, but I'm sure there's some explanation for it. This open circle and the water that is out here, for some reason, it has drawn the electrons into here, and this is filled with electrons now in this hole. And the electrons are just little negatives, and they shouldn't be anywhere but attached to positives. But now they're sitting there all by themselves. It's very unusual. And when this comes collapsing back down, they do not re-enter the water. Now that is the part I cannot fully explain. But there's things called hydrophobic and hydrophilic reactions, where water is a polar molecule. It has a plus end and a negative end, H2O. And I believe it has created a barrier here that will not let the negatives back into this mass. At that point, it has no other option other to start boiling and festering in here until it cannot take it anymore, and then it releases in an extremely violent, explosive blast of energy, and they claim it's in the millions of degrees. Now watch it. Here it goes. It's starting to crash. It's done. It can't go any further. Watch this boil. This literally boils. You see that? That is the same thing you will see as boiling inside of a pan. And if you could tell me that's not boiling, I don't know, you have to go to lens crafters or something, because that is boiling. All right, so here it goes. It's coming down. It has nowhere to go. It's saying, I got to get out of here. What am I going to do? And now look over here. You see over here? This is really where it's compressing. We're seeing the outside emanation of it saying, I got to get out of here. I got to get out of here. It says, I'm getting so crushed. What do you want me to do? So I can't get back in the water. It won't let me back in. So what happens now? It keeps crushing. It says, all right, this is it. I'm done. I cannot stand this anymore. He says, well, what do you want me to do? And he said, well, I got to leave. I'm going. And poof, watch. But gone. And now we're seeing it. It's still now arriving at the external. You see it? Here it comes. Poof, gone. All right, so now what happens on the surface of the water here? Let's go in and look at that. Let's see if we can find it. Hold on a second. All right, now let's look at the surface of the water. We know we had a firecracker in there. Water is dense. Water is dense. It's as hard as concrete, harder than concrete. It's extremely small, very small molecule, H2O. There's only, hydrogen is almost nothing, and oxygen is not too big either. So you got H2O, and they're molecularly configured. They're attracted to each other. They're polar molecules. They align themselves, and that's what creates surface tension. That's why you have water. It becomes a bubble. Now, having said that, there's a box of water here. A cavity opens inside. It's small, no big deal. It collapses back down, should just go away. No, it does not just go away. It makes a violent explosion, and that's what we're going to see now. Here it goes. All right, here's the surface of the water. So, boom, there's it here, and now I'm going to stop when it shows. Here's the first shock. See, it's coming up, but we're seeing some of that, but there it is. See, now look at that. Okay, now it's going to stop. See it start to collapse? There comes the big boy. That's when it hits the sonoluminescence and explodes when the collapse came. You see it? And look at how violent that goes. So the little one was the first one. Let's go back and look at it again. All right. Here we go. The little one comes up, it goes bloop, and then it just pretty much drops right away. Watch. Here it goes. Bloop. And that's it. It's really done at that point. and it's starting to collapse. See it collapse? Now what happens? Woo! Here it comes. There it goes. That's the one from the sonoluminescence. So we saw the firecracker give off not much of a real shock. The shock came on the collapse. All right, think about that deeply, because we input a certain amount of energy to create the cavity. All right, and we got back much more energy than we put in. I'm saying, well, something's not right here. Why shouldn't we be able to use that energy? And there is other things that we can do to facilitate more energy coming back out of there, because you can box this in, and water is not compressible. All right, that's very important to understand. Water is not compressible. If it's in a limited, restricted space, and you try to expand it, it's not it's not expandable, and it's not compressible. So the whole thing is going to have to you could increase the energetic output of this, I'm certain. The other thing is, when I showed before the sonoluminescence, what I am saying is, instead of putting a firecracker in that water, we use that sonoluminescence to we frequency, just like I saw. The guy was shaking, and then he got all that water going. Well, if it's inside of a restricted space, you're going to get some energy out of that, more than you're put into that. That's my claim, and I'm just talking. I could be totally wrong, but somebody's going to have to prove me wrong, because I can see what I see. And they're talking about degrees in the millions of degrees, which is literally electrons. It is not. It's way past fire. It's way past gamma rays. It's way out there. It is electricity. It's electrons in this range, and they can see it, and they know that there's a tremendous amount of energy here. Now, there's two ways of harnessing that. You can use mechanically as it expands. Somehow there should be some way of harnessing that. Putting a piston in there or something. You put a little shock in, whoa, just like in a piston engine. The other possibility is to take that light source that's coming out of there, instead of harnessing it inside where the light can't get out and it just expands the volume, we let that light escape in a conduit of some sort where it turns into electricity. Because light is electricity. Light hits a solar panel, whoops, and you got electricity. That's just the way it works. So these are all my statements. These are my claims. These are just things that I'm bouncing off, and these are things that are quite visible and quite obvious. So all I can say is they should be looked at. And if you could take a piston engine, no more than, all it does is it explodes inside when that piston is up, and it drives the piston down, and then it forces it up again and crushes another, and it explodes with the gas, and it drives it down. Why couldn't you do it with this, with water? Somehow we have to tickle that thing to explode, and you could do that with resonance. When it hit the thing, you could tickle it with the resonance, and boom, and it drops. And then it just floats back up, and boom, you hit it again. Something like that. There's got to be something to be able to use that. That secondary explosion is not something to take lightly. All right? It's that secondary explosion and the sonoluminescence and the flood of electrons. Being in the open light from the sun completely floods everything with electrons, always. It's just forcing them in here. We see it as visible light. It's heat, it's light. It's the exact same thing that they just created with the sonoluminescence by shaking it. We can do this and make free energy. I'm certain of it. If somebody with a little more intelligence than me put this together and had the wherewithal and the resources, I'm sure this can be done. And it would make a big game changer if you could just go out there and start running things with water, sonoluminescence, frequencies, and possibly be able to recreate enough frequencies and energy to power itself. That's what this is all about, really. That's what I'm talking about. I don't know if it can be done, but it sure couldn't hurt to try.